Hey guys, I have a very special guest with me today, Karthik. So Karthik is another 40 under 40 data scientist selected by Analytics India magazine, and Karthik has very rich experience in insurance domain. And Karthik is currently associated with an organization that maintains kind of credit information for individuals and organizations as well. So the reason Karthik is here is I want you guys to understand uh, different kind of use cases in insurance industry. That is one. Other is Karthik being a very experienced data scientist, what kind of learning path he followed, what kind of challenges he faced, and what kind of suggestions he has for all of you. So Karthik sir, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Aman. Thanks for having me. And hi, everyone. Uh, so, as Aman said, basically, I am currently working with the largest credit bureau in India, where I am leading the insurance analytics and products team. And prior to this, basically, so let me start in a chronological order. I started my career as an actuary. So I was appearing for some actuarial science papers, and I was working as an actuarial consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I saw that in future data science is an exciting field,
Mm-hmm.
and that will allow me to, let's say, diversify the application of my skill sets, which I was anyways learning while pursuing the actuarial qualifications.
Right.
So I decided to just broaden my skill sets,
Mm-hmm.
and where I will apply my knowledge from actuarial domain to, let's say, entire insurance analytics spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And that ways I then basically shifted from actuarial science to data science. And over a period of time, I have worked on some really exciting projects. In fact, on a particular government project as well. And I was able to work on some really large scale big data analytics projects within insurance industry. So that has been my journey so far. So started as an actuary and then moved to data science.
Okay. Okay. So I saw in the LinkedIn, Karthik, you have some experience in healthcare and some PNG and all these organizations, right? So what is that actually?
Sure. So basically, that is PNC.
Okay.
So we have three, let's say, verticals. So one is life insurance, the other is health insurance, and
Mm-hmm.
the third one is property and casualty insurance.
Okay.
Within which, so within PNC, then there are two more verticals: retail line and commercial line, or personal lines and commercial lines. So
Mm-hmm.
personal line products are basically for individuals to consume. For example, let's say there can be an insurance for your car, there can be an insurance for your property,
Mm-hmm.
versus a commercial insurance, which is primarily for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And healthcare domain and pension. Because health insurance and healthcare are slightly different in the way you finance the cost of the individual.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate enough to be able to work on some projects which are beyond insurance, but they are quite related to insurance field.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So when you moved from actuarial to data science, so how was the initial phase like? So that time there would be not many materials, not many, of course, people to guide. Nowadays we have everything on YouTube and web and Udemy, Coursera, right? So how did what were the first steps?
That's a good question. So basically, because I was pursuing the actual science papers, where a lot of material, even still today, is textbook based. Or let's
Right.
say there is a printed material, which, and there are thousands of pages of printed material per exam that you need to go through. So
Hmm.
I was able to develop a habit, or I was able to cultivate a habit of going through the books
Hmm. Hmm.
rather than just learning through YouTube videos. And everyone has a personal learning style. My learning style was developed and influenced by my preparations for the actual papers.
Hmm.
So at that time also there were enough textbooks available, both on the theoretical side as well as applied sides. So I was able to just basically browse through the best textbooks for learning, or let's say best books for learning R or machine learning from a theoretical perspective and applied perspective. And I was able to read through those books, and I was able to mock coding projects, etc., on my own. And because I was already working as an actuary, it was possible for me to quickly shift to insurance analytics projects. So
Right.
my theoretical learning and practical learning started at the same time. So I still remember that when I joined my first insurance analytics projects, I had zero knowledge of any kind of coding. I had some exposure to VBA coding,
Yeah.
but not any analytical
Mm-hmm.
code. First day of my job, I am learning, let's say, what is machine learning or statistical modeling outside of actuarial domain, of course. And at the same time, I am also learning to code SAS or R.
Yeah.
Yes.
So insurance domain, when we talk of, right, so for many people this is kind of new thing, or they have not heard of, including me. I'm not very much, I have not much idea on what different kind of use cases can be done on that area, right? So some of the common things, for example, some prediction, some forecasting, or cost optimization, these things people talk. So what are some of the interesting use cases that we should know? I mean, that would be new for us.
Yes, that is also a very good question. And you are right. Most of the examples or case studies or use cases which are generally available on any, let's say, YouTube videos or any books generally belong to, let's say, e-commerce field or some kind of optimization problems in different industries.
Yeah.
Or there are not enough practical case studies or use cases available. So
Yeah.
while studying the data science, you are always thinking in terms of solving the problem on, let's say, B2C domain.
Yeah. Correct.
Generally. So the unique thing about insurance, and which I think is almost absent with any other industry, is that you do not know the cost of your product while you are selling the product. Even at the time of selling the product, you know the price of your product, but not
Mm-hmm.
the cost in a bit detail.
Yeah.
See, so what happens is that, let's say, you are building or you are manufacturing something, or you
Mm-hmm.
are trying to sell something by creating some kind of an e-commerce platform, etc. So you
Mm-hmm.
almost know what kind of costs you will incur
Mm-hmm.
at a total level and at a per unit level, and then you can say that this is my cost, let's say 100, and then
Mm-hmm.
my profit 10, or I will start by taking some losses. So my the intended loss is, let's say, 10. So 100 plus 10 or 100 minus 10.
Yeah.
But in insurance, what happens is that at the time of selling the insurance policy, you do not know whether the claim will come or not.
True.
And if the claim comes, what will be the size of the claim?
Mm.
So these things are unknown.
Yeah.
And there can be very large variations also because of, let's say, some natural calamities or some kind of, for example, this kind of a pandemic situation or some kind of a business situation.
Mm.
Uh, so that is very interesting that there is a very large variety in insurance problems compared to any other industry problems as far as the analytical aspects are concerned.
Yeah.
That is a unique thing. So with that thing in mind, now I will talk about what kind of problems you can solve. Okay?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
will go through the entire insurance value chain. So first step would be the probability of conversion. So for example, let's say if I reach out to 100 people, who should I reach out to? So some kind of a targeted marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And then what would be the propensity for buy this product or not?
Mm-hmm.
And after that, there is a propensity for loss. But at the time of pricing for that particular individual, you should be able to predict what kind of losses or insurance claims can come from that particular insurance policy.
Mm.
Accordingly, you can basically charge an insurance premium. Then you need to be able to predict the probabilities that this individual will keep on renewing the insurance policies with you. And then in the end, if an insurance claim comes,
Mm.
then what is the probability, and this person is not basically trying to defraud the system.
Correct.
So these are some of the, let's say, four main scores which any insurance company is trying to calculate. Probability that a person will buy, probability that this is a good risk.
Mm-hmm.
I should basically onboard this risk. And then what is the probability that this person will keep on renewing? And then what is the probability that at the point of claim, whether this is a fraud or not?
Mm.
Yes.
And there can be many use cases or many applications on all these all these
Absolutely,
areas.
absolutely. Because
And
replicate these four scores for each insurance product type. So it could be for life, health, personal line, commercial line, etc.
so, follow-up question on that, Karthik. So, when we talk of different insurance areas, for example, life, health, or whatever, commercial or property insurance. So, what is the percentage of, for example, in India, if we talk insurance overall market, right? So, life insurance covering what percent, and people are not very keen to now. Also in our country, right? Insurance is something many people feel it's a, they are not
Yes,
very keen. You need to convince them to take insurance.
yes.
So
So
how? Yeah.
yeah. So I got your question. So basically, I'll say that those percentages are very, very low,
Hmm.
and the reasons are behind that are multiple. So the thing is that, let's say, people generally remain optimistic about the future. So they
Hmm.
think that nothing bad will happen to me,
Hmm. Hmm.
and even if they buy insurance policy, they, so you, let's say for health insurance, if you buy an health insurance policy today, you need to think of a 20-year scenario. And
Correct.
within 20 years, what kind of new diseases, new kind of treatments, and what would be the cost of those treatments after 20 years?
Hmm.
That size of an insurance policy you need to buy today. And people do not think about that. And people generally, so there is not enough awareness about the features and benefits of the insurance policy also. So generally people don't buy, and even if you buy, you end up buying a
Hmm. Hmm.
not so, so that results in some kind of a disappointment
Hmm.
whenever
Hmm.
there is an insurance claim, and that results in some kind of a negative publicity. So that is a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Yes, so that is the current situation in India.
But if we compare with developed countries or Western countries like US, UK, and all, these guys are very much, insurance is a kind of must for them. Different kinds of insurance.
Yes,
Am I right in this? Like, insurance is very huge industry there.
yes. So insurance is a very huge industry there. In fact, insurance is a big industry in India as well. But our population is so big that uh, the underinsured population still remains very, very large proportion
Mm.
of the total population. Now, what has happened abroad in many developed countries is that there are some regulations which mandates
Mm-hmm.
that every business, every individual need to have different types of insurance policies. And let's say there is a very high level of awareness. So, for example, let's say if I am your employee and something happens to me in the workplace or while I was driving to office, etc., then both of us are very much aware about what kind of claims I can levy on you. I can
Mm-hmm.
drag you to the court, and court systems are effective. They can dispense with the court cases very quickly, etc. So then you don't want to be in a situation where basically your business is doing well, but you are still incurring financial losses because of this kind of unforeseen situations. And similarly, that also pushes me to buy insurance policy, because now I am also thinking that even if I am, let's say, a tenant, so I'm staying at a rented place.
Mm.
If something is done by me, then my landlord can ask for money because I damaged his house. That kind of awareness is not present in India on both the sides, tenant as well as landlord. So, because of that, people do not generally buy insurance in India. So
Mm-hmm.
abroad, you must have heard these cases, but then buying an insurance policy is costlier. The total package becomes much more costlier. In India, insurance is almost a negligible amount.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And talking of insurance, also on CIBIL side, or let's say credit scoring side, how is the analytics presence there? I mean, what kind of scenarios or what kind of things we do in that space?
Yes. So this is a relatively upcoming area
Mm-hmm.
in India. Abroad, it is quite very well established.
Mm-hmm.
Able to appreciate this is to think about it through a particular perspective. Okay, and that perspective is this: that thanks to the e-commerce boom and
Mm-hmm.
digital apps boom in India and everywhere in the world, the expectations of the customers are raised drastically now. So let's say, because now you can buy anything at, let's say, 2-3 clicks, you also expect the insurance journey also to be equally smooth.
Yeah.
Pressure on insurance companies to ask less and less questions, because otherwise you would have to fill a detailed application form where you need to declare about your health, what kind of financial situation you are in, etc. Now insurers are saying that, well, if I ask 50 questions, then obviously he will not buy.
Yeah.
Add to that, now I have a lot of distributors who are selling, let's say, e-commerce products, or let's say there are some payment apps, etc., who already have a reach to a very large audience. And I can use them as distributor of insurance products also, but they are never ever going to agree to this kind of an insurance journey for their customers, because they will say that for each click, additionally, I want my customers to do the dropout ratio is such and such. So that puts pressure on the insurance companies to develop smaller insurance journey, which means asking less questions. But if you ask less questions, then how do you know about your risk?
True.
Because without understanding, was you do not know the cost in advance. So that forces insurance companies to know more about that particular individual from the external databases.
Right.
Yes. So within regulatory framework, how much extra you can know about this individual without asking him directly, and how you can convert that extra knowledge, marry that with what that individual has declared, combine that into some kind of mathematical form, which can then
True.
of the future losses. So that is where credit repositories become an almost unavoidable kind of a data provider, because we already know a lot about individuals' financial situation, which can then be converted into some kind of an insight insurance companies can consume. So currently I am working on using credit data to predict insurance events.
Okay.
Yes, and convert that into some kind of, let's say, API companies can consume in real time, and convert that into some kind of a equation, which can then be used to price the risk, or which can help them decide whether they want to sell that particular policy to you or not.
So credit scoring or credit CIBIL score is nowadays, if you go for any car loan, etc., also your interest rate will vary based on your CIBIL score, it seems.
Yes.
So many things are attached to this actually.
Yes. So now, basically, CIBIL score, so as you can understand, that is predicting the probability of default loan, right? So our objective is to develop similar scores for insurance as well. So by using credit data, can we predict the probability of an insurance claim? That is the question that we have solved already.
Okay.
Yes.
I got that part.
Yes.
So if we talk of insurance industry as such, then from the technology standpoint, right? So I was seeing your LinkedIn and I saw some cloud applications, etc. So what are the things we are mostly using? Is it like a full stack, new latest technologies, or we are kind of relying on some tried and tested things now?
Yeah, so that's the answer to that question is relatively multi-layered. So first of all, what we need to understand is that insurance is a very innovative product, although it is very old product. Century now, but it is such an innovative idea. That basically you take a very small amount of money from everyone, and whoever has been unfortunate to face some loss, you give larger volume of money to those particular individuals, and remaining amount is your profit, right? That idea was so innovative beyond a century that it has still continued as it is. Right. So that basically creates a conviction in insurance mind. Let's say innovation is needed around this idea. So this idea still holds value, and you can still do this kind of an average costing and payout losses to some people, and the remaining amount is your profit. But this is a very, let's say, basic explanation. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So nowadays, what happens is that because you still want to sell,
Correct.
and people are not buying, so that is where you want to be innovative. So you don't want to primarily be innovative in how do you calculate that, want to be innovative around that, the operations around it. So how do you sell more effectively and digitally? How do you assess the risk digitally? How do you, let's say, manage the customer service digitally? How can you settle the claims digitally, etc.?
Yeah.
From that perspective, where insurers are investing is slightly different from where most of the industries are investing.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if I come to the topic of our interest, which is data science, so basically, insurers are based applications, but generally they are using so far cloud as just a leverage for optimizing the hardware cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the platform as a service aspect has still not kicked in.
Mm.
Not only in India, but abroad also. So you will see most of the insurers using cloud as a
Mm.
hardware platform. And on that cloud, again, there will be the same data science tools,
Mm.
which are anyways available on your server. So now
Mm.
they will run faster. That is the only difference.
Yeah.
So they are building and model deployment tools which are being provided by the cloud service providers. So
Mm-hmm.
that revolution is yet to come in insurance.
Okay.
Yes.
And one generic question: if somebody goes for an interview, let's say, and you want to hire that person for, let's say, working under you, so we have understood, audience has understood, what kind of work you have been doing. So what are the things you will see in the candidate?
So I generally look for something called T profile. So T profile means that you have a depth in
Mm-hmm.
one field, and then you can appreciate some other fields.
True.
So generally, I like to have two type of people in my team. So
Mm-hmm.
either you have very deep appreciation of what you are doing, what you are supposed to do. So that means that you are a very good coder and
Mm-hmm.
you understand the underlying framework of the machine learning techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So you should understand that, let's say, decision tree versus of decision trees.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that required? That kind of an underlying understanding of the framework is much more important than your ability to be able to build a model on random forest.
True.
So that is aspect number one. But at the same time, you should be able to appreciate the applied aspects. For
Mm-hmm.
example, what I talked about the insurance industry, that you don't know the cost in advance. So what? So then you will have to tweak the way you work.
Mm-hmm.
Or let's say, basically, customers, and you will have to go and sell an insurance policy. So see, so that will basically create some constraints on the Salesforce side. So that results in some constraints for you.
Mm-hmm.
And your IT is not currently focusing on, let's say, deploying very sophisticated machine learning models. Their focus is developing digital journeys.
Mm-hmm.
In that entire journey, it is like a business process, right? And there are
Right.
multiple steps. One of the steps is your predictive model.
Mm-hmm.
Now, nobody is eyeing for me. Then how can you eye for a 100% perfect model?
Mm-hmm.
So nobody is expecting you to come up with a very, very highly powerful predictive model. They are expecting you to come up with a model which fits in the current IT framework,
Mm-hmm.
which can be easily deployed. And within that framework, you can try to achieve as much predictive accuracy you want to achieve. So I look for those kind of people who deeply understand what they are doing, but at the same time, they appreciate the constraints, environmental constraints around them. And I also try to look for people who appreciates the business aspects very deeply,
Mm-hmm.
and then they appreciate the analytical aspects a little less, and that is also fine, because you still need people who can translate business problem into analytics problem and vice versa, who can identify the problem statements and then prioritize which one to solve first, etc. But those
Mm-hmm.
people will not be at a very junior level.
Yeah.
They would be people who were working as an analyst in the past, and now they reach a certain level.
Mhm. So one question that keeps coming to me through comment is, how do I improve my domain knowledge? For example, if somebody wants to, in one way is, let's say I work in finance projects, I work in retail projects, then I get to know what kind of data, what kind of things. But apart from that, suppose as my interest, I want to know about insurance domain. So how should I approach that?
Yeah. So how much you can learn about a particular domain
Hmm.
while being outside of that domain.
Yeah.
So there is a very small margin that you can improve.
Hmm.
Within that, I will say that either you can network with the people who are working in that domain,
Hmm.
or every domain will have some industry association or some educational institute which is recognized by the industry, and
Hmm.
they will be offering some educational certifications.
Correct.
You can try to do some very basic level educational certification from that industry association. Now, within that, you may say that let me try to just learn about it and not try to pursue the certification itself, because that then you are preparing for examination. You need to put in much more effort.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you will say that now I am preparing for data science and I need to prepare for one more exam. So you may decide to not to pursue that certification, but purchase that educational material
Hmm.
and go through it. And let's say you try to also go through some videos which are available on YouTube for that particular examination material. So that
Hmm.
will quickly help you build a,
Okay. Okay.
yes.
What are the some videos or some links or some blog portals, if you can name some that you refer, maybe from data science perspective, also from domain perspective also.
Yeah. So from domain perspective, there is an institute called Insurance Institute of India,
Mm-hmm.
and I will share that link also with you, so you can post it on your video for your viewers. Uh, they have very nice series of educational materials and video lectures also on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Viewers build the domain knowledge. And on the data science side, as I said, I am primarily a book person. So I go through books.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, let's say, if I have further doubts or if I want to just focus on clearing my doubts on a particular area, then I just try to do some YouTube search and try to watch a couple of videos. But I'm not a particular, let's say, MOOC kind of a person who will go through
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Got it. So these are some of the links. I'll be pasting that in the description. Not a
Sure,
problem.
sure. So I will be able to recommend some books which were able to deliver a lot of aha moments to me, either from
Okay.
a theoretical perspective or from an applied perspective in data science. I will
Mm-hmm.
definitely be able to share those links.
Sure. Sure.
Yes.
I'll just paste that in my video.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And Karthik, one last thing. How what is your, so I'll just talk little bit about my subscribers here. Okay. So my subscribers are mostly somebody who is trying to make a move to data science. Maybe somebody who was a Java developer or .NET developer. They are trying to move to data science, or somebody who is a fourth year engineering guy or second year MBA guy. They want to come to data science field, right? So what would you advise them, like how they should, what path they should follow?
Okay. So I will say that if you okay, so there will be two category of people who are trying to category of people who whose career has not started in any field, or
Right.
who are at the very start of their career.
Hmm.
So they will have to learn coding.
Hmm.
Coding with an analytical bent of mind. There is no two way. There are no two ways about it. So that would be the first step. And as I said, after that, if you can appreciate what is happening at the background of any analytical technique, then
Hmm.
that is much more valuable.
Yeah.
Yes, compared to only being able to code,
Hmm.
because that is something which everyone can do now. And with more and more, let's say, platform as a service kind of tools coming to the market, and with this whole no code movement, in
Hmm.
future maybe those works will be completely converted into some kind of a GUI based model training and deployment framework. So we will really need people who understand what is happening in the background for that particular tool, so that they can say that for this particular problem, this tool will not suffice, creative coding around it. So that is what they should try to learn. But for people who are currently at, let's say, mid-level or mid-senior level in their career, and who are then trying to transition to data science field, they should be able to build more appreciation about what is happening in the background of those techniques, or let's say what kind of business problem are we trying to solve, or let's say solve or sell both, and and let's say why the business would like to go for auto ML kind of a solution. So they should be able to appreciate these aspects, because if they manage to transition, then they will have a team that will be working for them or with them. So for them, coding is not that much important. But let's say if they are going through a book and some codes are written in between, they should just be able to read through that code and understand what is happening. Nobody is expecting them to be able to code a solution. Yes, so that is the difference.
Yeah, so if you are starting from zero in your career, then coding is the first thing that you should take. And if you are somewhere around mid-level or mid to senior, then you should try to, you should be in a mindset to how to handshake between what you are trying to sell, how things are working in the background, right? These kind of aspects.
Yes, and I will say that try to solve tabular data problems more, rather than, let's say, some deep learning problems.
Yeah.
So there are less applications of, let's say, computer vision or some kind of conversational AI, that kind of a problem. But there are a lot of applications for structured data. So if you learn, let's say, SQL first, and if you just master SQL or SQL first, then that is kind of a universal language that also allows you to think, right? And most of the tools come with some kind of implementation on SQL also. Let's say if you learn SQL, then you master R, and now you want to work in Python. So in Python also, you can do something with SQL only without learning to Python, without learning to code in Python completely, or vice versa also. So that allows you. After that, let's say if you want to move to big data, so in Spark also there is SQL.
Yeah.
Let's say platform agnostic if you master SQL well, and then you can communicate with your colleague who may understand a different kind of language and you understand a different kind of in terms of coding. So master SQL and master the thinking paradigm of tabular data solving, rather than solving some kind of NLP problem, etc. So deep learning problems are much more exciting, and maybe there is, let's say, a lot of money to be made if you manage to get into that kind of a career. But available in tabular data solution. For that, SQL is a must.
Very, very, very good point, actually. That point is very important, guys, what Karthik is mentioning. See, when I see some freshers resume, I see just one project, and that project is an image analysis project. So it's like this. See, you are trying to sell yourself, which means you are trying to get a job, and then what you have to offer is something which is very niche. So what Karthik is suggesting is what you should offer to the recruiter is something which is very generic, right, Karthik?
Yes, absolutely.
So that they can fit you in different requirements.
Yes.
Yeah. That was great, Karthik. So thanks a lot, Karthik, for your time. And just I want to thank you from all my subscribers side as well. So stay safe with your family, and take care.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Karthik.